best thing would be to start with a job.
No.
Yeah, absolutely,
No.
she needs a job.
No.
Do you ever just get stuck waiting for your child to be ready to potty train, ready to sleep train, ready to learn to read? Or maybe you're stuck waiting for yourself to be ready. I'm not ready for a job. I'm not ready to get married. I'm not ready to have kids. Today, we're going to dispel the readiness trap, why our generation is suffering from it so much, and what we can do to raise kids who just take bold action instead of waiting. That little video very well represents the type of anxiety that Gen Z is feeling about making big life decisions. One of the things that we can see in Gen Z as a very strong trend is that they don't feel ready. They don't feel ready to grow up. They don't feel ready for their first job. They don't feel ready to take on any kind of responsibility. Many of them, in fact, about 52% of them, live with their parents into their 20s and even 30s, which is considered failure to launch. Many of them don't feel that they could ever have children, not necessarily because they don't want children, but because they just don't feel ready. Many of them feel that tick-tocking of the biological clock that will come at some point or other, but reject it. They want to kick the can down the lane and not take decisions or dive in or make any kind of commitments right now because we're not ready. And before you judge Gen Z too harshly, notice that this is something that is very prevalent in our own parenting style as well. I'll speak for myself, but when I was much more in the mindset of unschooling in my early years of parenting, one of the things that unschooling taught was that you always need to wait for child's readiness. A child will show the signs when they're ready to read, when they're ready to potty train, when they're ready to leave your bed, when they're ready to stop breastfeeding, when they're ready to try solid food. Just like a child who is developing normally will naturally start to crawl and walk, children will naturally make all the other decisions in life. And you should just leave it up to them with zero pressure, with zero cajoling or suggesting or encouraging or pushing, and they will get there on their own, except when they don't. And that's the problem with this philosophy, is that, yeah, sometimes readiness just happens, but sometimes it doesn't. And we still need to move forward with key life milestones, decisions, and commitments, even when we don't always feel that magical well of readiness.
The best thing would be to start with a job.
No.
Yeah, absolutely,
No.
she needs a job.
No.
And I think it would be great if you volunteered some more at the soup kitchen. You could do some great volunteer work down there.
I did that.
No.
I started with a babysitter. I think my first job was at IHOP.
Oh, you don't pay me to babysit. She makes me babysit for free.
She doesn't need a job babysitting. She needs a job in the world.
I
No.
agree.
She doesn't need a job at
Absolutely
home.
not.
She needs a job in the world.
Sorry, no.
You need a job.
No, I don't want a job.
Well, I know.
It's so much work.
But
I'm so tired from work. I don't want to do that.
Okay, so this is a bit cringy and really funny example of, I guess, a Gen Z kid totally melting down at the prospect of getting a job. But where does this all originate? Where does it start? And how can we as parents learn to stop waiting for ready and take bold actions instead of waiting for the perfect opportunity and perfect planning? Here's the truth. Waiting for readiness, whether it's our own or our children's, is so often just an excuse. It's a way for us to sidestep embracing bold action and getting transformation and sometimes rapid results. But I want to empower you and your child to overcome procrastination, to not always think small, to not always hold back, to be able to dive into a project or an idea or to level up or to develop that skill or commit to the relationship and to move forward with our lives. So how do we do this? Well, number one, I want you to know that there are real and imagined barriers. Some of the obstacles that we have for readiness are real. Sometimes a child really isn't developmentally ready. They just haven't ripened to that degree. Sometimes there are things that are just biologically, technically, physically, or psychologically true that limit our ability to make a certain decision. But I want to give you one example that broke that mold for me and surprised me and opened my mind, kind of cracked my thinking open to ways that we might be kind of limiting our own selves, clamping down on our own potential because of this myth of readiness. So you ready? Here we go. When I had my first child, I was diapering him. He was about 5 weeks old. And I went to IKEA and I was cloth diapering him in the changing room there. And a woman came up to me and said, "Oh my gosh, you're cloth diapering. Have you heard of elimination communication?" And I was like, huh? Because that's a really strange term. But as soon as I got home, I Googled it and I read all about it. And it turns out elimination communication teaches us that babies are actually born ready to potty train. No, let me say that differently. They're not ready to potty train. They are already in touch with their urges and with their needs to eliminate, to pee or poo. And they actually communicate those needs to us through grunting or kicking or discomfort or crying. I was like, whoa, stop the bus. I was in shock because my entire life I lived through this paradigm of babies aren't physically ready to potty train until they're about 2 years old. Until that age, they don't have the physical strength or the muscular contractions or the ability to even know that they're peeing or pooping. They're completely disconnected from their body. So this was just a complete paradigm shift for me. I had never heard of it before. I'd never seen anyone practice it in my culture before. And I was hooked. And that very day, I noticed my kid kind of grunting a little bit, 5 weeks old, took off his diaper, held him over the sink, and he peed. And I was like, mind blown. But what this taught me was to actually take this perspective and project it further on life as a whole and notice that sometimes we have societal predetermined notions, taboos, stigmas, ideas, just accepted norms that we don't question that tell us that you can't do something until you're ready for it. For example, today we have the societal norm that teens can't get a job, they're not ready for a job, or that young adults in their 20s aren't ready for marriage. Or that if you're in your early 30s, you might not be ready to have kids yet. We have the idea that kids aren't ready to learn to read until a certain age, or ready for many other things besides. But the truth is that these are only sometimes and partially true. Think about a fruit ripening on the tree. It's true that there is a point at which the fruit is not yet ready to eat. In fact, it might even be dangerous to eat it. But there is also a point where the fruit is ripe. And if you wait too long, then it becomes overripe and even begins to rot. There is such a thing as too much readiness or waiting too long or missing the window of opportunity. Most of our growth, in fact, does not happen like fruit ripening. Most of our growth actually happens inside the process itself. So for example, with elimination communication, a baby shows potential to be communicated with and have their needs met through the adult. They show that potential, but you have to dive into the process for them to actually be fully potty trained, as it were. Now, all of my 5 children have been potty trained completely out of diapers by the age of about 1.5. And that's because I answered that readiness with a commitment. I actually was willing to act. And here's the deal, is that very often we say we're not ready, but it's really that we're not ready to act. We're not willing to do what it takes. Like saying you're not ready to have kids. I mean, sometimes people really aren't ready to have kids, but sometimes they could be ready to have kids, but they're just not willing to put in the commitment, to make the decision, to dive in with both feet, to actually leap, and the net will appear. There's an idea that is not always true. Okay, sometimes we're not ready for things, but there is this idea of leaping and the net appears, that you have to take the first step, that you have to somehow put yourself forward, get into an uncomfortable situation, try something that you're not quite qualified for yet, not quite ready for yet. And that's because most of life's skills, most of life's milestones are things that we can only achieve once we dive in. I don't think there is a parent on the planet who was ready to have kids before they had kids. Even if you have all your finances lined up, your relationship is amazing, your health is in the best place ever, you've got your forever home, you've got family and friends around you, you're still not ready to have a child. You're not ready for the life-changing transformation that is going to occur once that new life is born into the world. You're not ready for the particular temperament or the particular needs or diagnoses or anything that might come with that child that is unknown. And that's exactly the point, is that you can't have full preparedness and full readiness for something that is unknown. you're also not ready for the ever changing. Having children or getting married are two examples of a process you enter in that then changes dramatically over the years. So even if in some magical world you were ready for a baby, you probably weren't ready for a teenager or for an adult child or even for a toddler, because that readiness, that ability to meet the challenge that comes up before us changes and adapts because we grow on the job. And that is the piece that I think Gen Z and many of us parents are missing. Kids learn on the job. Adults learn on the job. We learn by adapting to and meeting and being flexible with our skills as the challenges arise. As the challenges grow, so do we. And you can't just do all of this growth without the challenge. The challenge is the catalyst for the growth. So what do I mean by that? Now you might say, let's say I want to be ready to get married. I need to be 100% sure. I need to be completely in love and committed. I need to be, I need to just have all the prenups and everything needs to be foolproof. And we need to have all the financial stability and my career needs to be in order and the families need to love each other. And the truth is that even if you have all of those things, all of your ducks are in a row, once you get married, people change, circumstances change, people get ill, people get fired, tragedies strike, surprising things happen, new ideas arise within us, our identity shifts and morphs as the time goes on. And so you aren't ready for it. Of course you're not ready for it. You're just ready to make the commitment. And so I think we need to shift our thinking from being ready to being willing to act. Let's bring it down to parenting for a moment, okay? Because I'll give you an example. I used to think that I just need to wait for my child to be ready to read. And that worked very well with my first child. He wasn't interested until he was. And then suddenly he jumped from Bob books to Harry Potter. And he is an absolute bookworm to this day. But I've had other children who never quite showed those signs of readiness. They didn't just pick up the books and show interest. Now, if I waited till they were in their 20s, might they feel enough social pressure? Might they just feel suddenly ready? Might they feel the internal motivation and the impulse to act? Maybe. Or maybe they develop a crippling self-consciousness, or they would internalize and collect confirmation bias style, all of the evidence that shows that they're incapable, that they're not smart enough, that if they didn't do it when they were 6 or 7, why would they ever do it when they're 11 or 12? I don't know how that would have played out because I didn't leave it up to risk. I taught them to read, whether they liked it or not, whether they were ready or not. And I know, you're going to come at me in the comments with all sorts of diagnoses. Well, it's different with dyslexia. It's different with ADHD. And that's all true. I'm just talking about the very mindset of readiness, right? Where sometimes we're just holding ourselves or our child back. We're actually procrastinating or keeping ourselves small or hiding behind excuses rather than just being willing to go into the process and do what it takes and take the next steps, which are always hard, no matter what we're trying to do. So are there some children who simply aren't ready to learn to read? Of course, it would be ridiculous to try and teach a newborn to read, for example, I think. But there are children who could be ready, but you would need to come with the right commitment, with the willingness to take action. As I've already said, there are real obstacles to readiness for developing certain skills or for making certain life decisions. But some of those seem like they're real, but even those might be imagined. So I just want to invite you to question them. Sometimes we have self-imposed obstacles, or we think it's a real obstacle, but in fact, the real reason we're not diving in is for another reason altogether. For example, many people state financial concerns for a reason that they aren't ready to have children. They say that they can't afford to have children. In fact, that's one of the top reasons that people don't have kids. But if we look at countries where kids are heavily encouraged and subsidized by the government's welfare programs, very generous and long maternity and paternity leaves, free creches, childcare, school lunches, etc., and even government stipends and tax cuts for parents, we see that people don't have any more kids than in the countries that don't have those benefits. In fact, they're also struggling with population growth and opting out of parenthood altogether. And so this kind of exposes that the real reason people aren't having kids is probably not because they're not financially ready. So do you see, sometimes we think we're not ready for something, but we have a different reason that we're not making that choice or diving into that next step or milestone in our life that actually is the reason that's holding us back. So we need to examine our imagined reasons. Imagined barriers might be things like fear of failure. sometimes even fear of success, but more likely it's perfectionism or simply not feeling it, just not being in the mood. These are the self-imposed excuses that often keep us stagnant. For example, parents often tell me that their child isn't ready to potty train. Now, there are some specific obstacles that might be very real why a child can't potty train, but for the most part, it's more that the parent isn't willing to act. The parent doesn't want to spend the 3 days chasing the child around naked and dealing with the pee, and they can't take that time off work right now. And it's not that the child isn't ready, it's that the parent doesn't want to commit and take the actions that are necessary in order to achieve this goal. I used to feel the same way about reading until I was just like, well, actually, I'm willing to commit. I'll spend the 10 minutes a day. I'll teach my child to read. And I think a lot of people feel this way about starting their side hustle or getting to the gym or starting to cook more healthy or going to bed earlier or getting off of social media or any number of personal goals we might have for ourselves. So if you hear yourself saying, I'm too busy, she's just not ready for it yet, I can't afford that, I don't have time, I'm just not ready, I want you to question these excuses and ask yourself, are these true obstacles or are these imagined barriers? True progress comes from a willingness to take risks, to go all in, and to learn on the job, rather than waiting for that perfect moment.
I just got hired for a job that I am not qualified for. And they told me that in the room. I walked in and they said, we need this on your resume, and it's not. But we wanted to give you an interview because of the vibe of your resume. And I got that job, and they're going to train me. So if you're not qualified for something, apply anyways. Moral of the story.
I think that's a great moral of the story that I would like my kids to internalize. Yes, they should develop their skills. Yes, try and get that thing on your resume, but also just apply anyway. Just try. Just put your best foot forward. Because the thing is that what we lack in readiness or in things on our resume, we can often make up for with grittiness, with commitment, with hard work, with good work ethic, with morale, with enthusiasm, with an eagerness to learn, with curiosity. Take employers, for example. Of course, they might want specific skills. They might have a wish list of things that they would like to see on your resume. But if you don't have that and you show up bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and willing to put in a good day's work, willing to be a team member, willing to really learn on the job, then they will throw that wish list in the bin really quickly and take you on and teach you. They'll mentor you. You'll be an apprentice and you'll learn on the go. And you're likely to develop those skills and learn even better than someone who has the degrees and the qualifications because of your attitude. Write this one down. Attitude trumps readiness every single time. It's your attitude to your child's development. It's your attitude to your own development that is going to change your progress and get you the rewards that you seek, not your readiness level. Gen Z is stuck waiting for perfection. They're stuck waiting for the perfect time, for the perfect mood, for the perfect vibe. They are stuck in a perfectionist mindset that says, I can't just go out and try and work and hustle and learn and have grit and resilience and bounce back and try again and fail and never quit. They're not having that mindset because they're being taught by parents who are obsessed with being ready for something. It's the parent who comes in and says, my child's not ready to take a test yet. It's causing them too much anxiety. Can they have the test to go home instead of taking the test in school? It's the parent who says, you might not be ready to try out for the team. You need to first build up your self-esteem, your self-confidence, and self-love. It's the parent who says, oh, you're not ready to take on a job yet. That's a lot of responsibility, and you at 14 can't quite commit to that. If we keep delaying, procrastinating, and waiting for perfectionism, then it can never come because you never have the attitude of learning as you go. Progress happens when we start, even if it's not 100% perfect. Look at anyone who's ever accomplished anything. Tech CEOs, people who have massive podcast followings or social media influencers, people who have created great art, great movies, great books. Anyone who's ever created anything worthwhile on this planet knows that when they first started, it wasn't much to look at. It wasn't all that impressive. Their first jabs, their first scripts, their first drafts are always not amazing. They're mediocre. They're imperfect, but they didn't wait for perfect to publish. I want you to remember this. Published is better than perfect. Getting it out there and getting it done is better than doing it perfectly. For example, if you're waiting for the perfect curriculum or the perfect therapist or the perfect house or the perfect meal plan or the perfect anything, you might be waiting forever because there's no such thing as perfection on this planet. There is only progress. We start and we iterate and we improve as we go along. Even if you're not 100% prepared, mistakes are part of the learning process. This is something we must internalize as parents so that we don't project this perfectionism onto our children. It will cripple them. The truth is that taking some kind of bold action today leads to tangible growth, often exponential and surprising growth. This kind of rapid quantum leap in your lifestyle or in your skill set. Let me give you a simple parent-friendly example. Parents have come to me so stuck with their kids in their beds. I can't get my kid out of my bed. I want my kid to sleep in their own bed. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to follow through on the boundaries. I just can't do it. They're not ready. And what they're really trying to say to me is not that their child's not ready, because of course they are, and not that they're not ready, because of course they are, but that they're not willing to act. They're not willing to take the bold action, to risk some mistakes along the way, to get a bit uncomfortable, but to move forward and dive into the process so that they can make progress. So what are your action steps, tips for immediate change, for moving out of this readiness paradigm and into the taking action paradigm? First is you need to identify the real prerequisites. Yes, there are some things that really do have to happen before you're ready for the next step or before your child can develop a certain skill. But list those essentials and differentiate them from the nice-to-haves in order to achieve this next goal. Be realistic and kind of harsh with yourself. Offer yourself some tough love and truth bombs about what you really need. Or can you just dive in and figure it out as you go along? Next, break things down. Maybe getting your child out of the bed, teaching them to read, or potty training them is too big a task. It just feels daunting, and so you feel like, I'm not ready. But instead, break it down to small, tangible, actionable steps. Every task, no matter how big, can be broken down to just the next set of tasks. Oh, I just need to buy the potty. I need to set up the crib. I need to get the curriculum. I need to buy the bike, right? Whatever it is that you feel your child's not ready for. Or for you, I need to buy the domain for my website, or I need to get the workout shoes in order to start running again. What is that small, tangible, actionable step that you could already take today that you don't need to procrastinate on, and that will build momentum for you so you feel like, okay, I'm in this process. It's starting. I'm going to see progress soon. The next one is to start now. Take that small, actionable step, hit order on the product, make the phone call, write it in the diary, set up the room in the correct way. Do something now. I encourage you right now. I know you're sitting on something. I see you. You're sitting on something that you feel you're not ready for. Dive in, take that step. Even if it's imperfect, which I guarantee you it will be. Learn on the job. Encourage yourself and your child to take opportunities that feel just out of reach, that feel like you just couldn't make it. It's just beyond your skill set, and then learn as you go. I want to remind you that this is how children develop naturally. They push themselves into challenges that they're not quite ready for. And we kind of scaffold them and support them as they make that leap from their comfort zone to the zone of learning through to the next comfort zone, right? As they expand and grow. So children do this, say, through play. And if you haven't got my course yet, Reclaim Play, make sure to get it now. Go to reclaimplay.com and encourage your child's independence through play. But why do I bring play up, apart from to plug this course, which I really want you to take because it's amazing? I think every parent needs to see play as an opportunity for children to learn and stretch their skills. We don't say he's not ready, right, when it comes to play, because play itself becomes harder and harder as kids grow and expand. They set themselves challenges. First, it's in the realm of their bodies, like touching their toes, learning to roll over, learning to crawl, to stand, to walk. But then it becomes intellectual pursuits, like putting the blocks together, grouping them by color, organizing them into categories. It becomes social pursuits, like nurturing the dolls, sharing with a friend, coming up with an idea for a joint game. These are the ways that our children challenge themselves and push themselves beyond their comfort zone and into the realm of learning. And that is something I want you to encourage them to do in all aspects of their life and in all aspects of your life too. Waiting for perfection and readiness is a way to keep ourselves small, dependent, hiding behind excuses, and unable to move forward in the world. Instead, we need to develop an attitude of competence, an attitude of our ability to take action, to be ready and willing to dive in and to take the next right step. If you've been waiting for the perfect moment to become the parent that you know you can be, to develop your leadership skills and build a strong family culture at home, stop waiting for the perfect moment and join the studio today. If it's open, you can join right now, or you can join the waitlist and get in next time we open our doors. This is the type of place where we don't look for perfection, where there isn't one right way. We're not dogmatic. We're not giving you pre-prescribed set processes, but rather helping you live out your dreams and build the family life that you always knew you wanted. Building those traditions, the cultures, the rituals, the chores and the teamwork, the bonding and the connection, the community and the family members that you wanted to connect with and that you just haven't done it yet. It's that family tree that you always wanted to hang on the wall, but you haven't had the time. It's the photo albums that you always wanted to get printed, but they just weren't perfect enough. It's the family party that you wanted to hold to bring everyone together, but it just doesn't seem like you're ready for it. If you feel like you're not ready to dive in and create that amazing family culture, I have news for you. You are. And it's just about taking that first bold step. So meet me inside the studio at hifam.com/studio. Meanwhile, I want to hear from you. What are you waiting on? What do you feel like you're not ready for? Have you ever waited for readiness only to feel like the fruit totally ripened and fell off the tree and is no longer edible? Have you felt like your child isn't ready for something, and have I given you a little bit of encouragement that maybe they actually are? Do you disagree with me on any of these points? I'd love to hear if so. I love reading your opinions and your feedback on these videos in the comments below, so make sure you leave me one today. Keep on living that hifam life, and I'll see you in the next video.